I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll now read the open public meeting statement. In accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, notice of this meeting was given by way of notice filed with the Star Gazette and/or the Express Times, filed in the Municipal Clerk's Office and posted in Belvidere Town Hall, 691 Water Street, Belvidere, New Jersey. This agenda is subject to last-minute additions and/or deletions by the Belvidere Town Council. Roll call, please. Here.
Councilman Kennedy.
Here.
Councilman McIntyre.
Here.
Councilwoman Myers.
Here.
Councilwoman Fontaine.
Here.
Councilman Petrie.
Here.
Councilman Seabold.
Here.
Okay. I will ask for approval of minutes, November 23rd, 2015, regular and executive meetings.
Motion.
We have a motion and a second. Just let me say, I'll abstain because I was absent, and let me give a thank you out to our council president for filling in for me. I wanted to go out without having any absences, but that was the first absence that I had due to a sinus infection in 6 years. So kind of was mad about it, but you can't control everything. So I will ask for any other corrections or comments. Anyone? No? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries full except for my abstention. Thank you. All right, we'll start with public comment. It's a maximum of 30 minutes with 5 minutes allowed to each speaker. And if you do want to address the council, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address, and we do time so that is kept on time. Who would like to go first?
Hi, my name is
Good
David
evening.
Thomas. I live at 241, 249 Water Street. My girlfriend,
Chastity Tolentino.
thank you. I've been parking here past 5, 6 years, okay? I understand that they got it. We were supposed to be able to park on the street, no problem. Now you changed it, and there's a sign in front of a particular store where we usually park, since they stopped us from parking in the parking lot.
So we parked there, and Saturday they asked us to move it. And I looked on the code book, and it's 25 feet from the corner to 116 feet. We were past the 116 feet. So why were we asked to move? They told us to bring it to the town council, and so we brought it here.
Okay, who asked you to make
The police,
The police, yes. Oh, you know his name? Milani?
Mariana,
No, really. Okay.
Patrolman Mariana.
And you're saying that you were parked past the
We
area
were,
that would
yes.
exclude the
That's
2
right.
hour?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and now there's a sign on the pole in front of the antique store. I say it's bogus. That's just my thing.
Okay.
Because it's got tape, you can see where it was scraped off, 4 or 5 hours. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why. Why are you stopping us from parking? And we live in an apartment. You have people that come in, they work there, fine. They park in the parking lot, nobody says anything to them. I have strange hours for my
Yes,
job.
yes,
I have to go all the way down to Carnegie and come back. And then I can't park there?
So what you're saying is, it sounds like due to recent proposed changes, it's created a problem for you that wasn't enforced in the past?
Yeah, that's one. Two, there's a sign there that's not even there. It's not even a sign as far as I'm concerned because it's tape. Understand? It's not a regular street sign that says what times that you can park.
So somebody put tape over it and
No.
wrote something?
It was a sign, and it looks like it's been altered
Altered, okay.
to suit whoever, whoever put it.
Is it a town sign?
It's a town size.
It's a town sign.
I'll explain when they're done.
Right.
Okay,
Oh,
all
cool.
right. We have the chief of police here, so maybe he can shed some light on that.
The 2-hour parking zone, and the sign's been missing. We have a problem with that sign disappearing multiple times. So, John has to
But,
continuously.
okay.
The sign I put up is, I didn't have any 8 to 8 signs, so I made an 8 to 8 sign. The sign is legal. Even though I made it, it's still legal.
okay,
It's 2-hour parking there. I got a complaint from the store that people were leaving their cars there all day. I can't even begin to tell you how many signs I've lost there.
Okay,
Somebody
that's
keeps
fine.
taking them down.
I
that's fine,
understand,
but.
but as long as we've been here, there was,
We were in the right, we were from 25 feet to 160.
It's 2-hour parking per the code book of the town of
But we were
Belvedere.
past the
No, you're not.
116
That
feet.
Where were you parked? In front of the antique store?
Yes.
yes.
That's 2-hour parking in front of the antique store.
I've Google mapped it, I've done the feet, and according to that.
According to my
yes.
code book, that's 2-hour parking. I'll double check it again, but
Somebody gotta check it again because,
So the bottom line is, you're a renter,
yes,
where do you park?
yes,
Right.
That
where?
is a problem.
well, they got parking lot out back.
No,
No,
that's not,
no, that's-
she said that's not our lot, we're not allowed to park there, they can tell
Exactly.
us.
And we've been here 5, 6 years, and
We
they told us
asked-
that since then.
You live in the apartments
Yes.
Above, right, over
and you can't park out back.
She
No.
said that is not her lot.
exactly.
And we've asked her that before because when it snows, we don't know where to go. And we wanted to put it in the back and she said that's not our lot, we can't park there.
Understand, so,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said her twice. Who is her?
Tanya Moraski, she's the landlady who I rent from. She works with Gwen.
So apparently your building, like some of the buildings in town,
Yes.
do not have parking.
Right.
And that does create a trouble.
Her landlord might be saying that, but they have direct parking straight behind the building.
If that's the
She might
case,
be
then,
telling them that, but there's.
okay, then if that's the case, then we know where to park then.
No,
We just
then-
No, I don't
know.
blame you guys. I know who the
You-
landlord is. We've dealt with
You've
for the past 6
reviewed-
years, she
it. I know
The
who we're
map.
talking about.
Okay, so then we'll be parking in the back then.
No,
Okay, I got
I'll
no
talk to you guys
big.
later.
Okay,
I know
You're
the land-
confident, you've
I know.
reviewed their property map.
I don't need to.
Okay.
Okay,
What?
well, that's
All right.
good news to us then. Thank you. Thank you. That's all we wanted to know.
yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Oh, you're
I'm sure
welcome.
the chief and,
Thank you.
Pardon?
the chief and John will work with you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, who would like to be next? Anyone? All right, if not, we will move on, thank you, to matters to be addressed, and Teresa is going to address a situation that has arisen, so go ahead, Teresa.
Originally, we had at House Street, the Kevin Bember who came in first. Mr. Bember was tied up with another matter. He was going to try to make it, but he didn't sound confident. We're going to text back and forth, depending on how quickly the municipal parking discussion goes, as to whether he's going to make it or not. So I will just play it by ear and move on with the municipal parking and see where you stand and where Mr. Bember is in his evening as to whether he's going to make it or not. Otherwise, you're going to have to, I guess, table it until he can be here.
Okay, so we're, well, oh, excuse me, did you have it okay?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay. Anybody have any questions on that or concerns? Okay, if not, then we are going to switch and do the municipal parking matters first. Okay? Before us is a ordinance that was presented this evening. And Teresa, if you want to go over that.
It's fine. It's.
Oh, it's yours, Katrina's, okay.
Basically, what this is finally in the draft form, two things. The first is a change to the municipal parking lots section. We discussed last time that Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you get one, Charlie?
Charlie took both of those.
Did you get an ordinance?
Okay, man.
No, this one.
No.
No, he doesn't have
Thank
one?
you.
No, I
Is
believe
this on his desk?
I didn't have one on mine.
Underneath.
No. No, I didn't get one.
Did
He
you get
didn't
a?
either.
Did you get a?
Oh, you did? Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't. That's
No,
not
I
bad,
have, I
thank
was
you.
handing him out.
Not a problem.
So the first page is just the whereas section. The second page is addressing municipal parking lots. So what this addresses is the discussion that council had the last two meetings about trying to make all of the municipal parking lots uniform in their regulations, but also designating what they are. Because if you remember, what your code book currently says is it designates parking lot number 1 is Scoog's parking lot, which is currently not your parking lot, but apparently you have an ordinance for it. Parking lot number 2 is the South Water Street off of Greenwich Street little parking lot. There's nothing for Riverside Park because you didn't own it until recently. So what the first change I made was to designate parking lot not number 1 to be Riverside Park, parking lot number 2 to stay South Water Street, and then I put in a kind of a catch-all to say that from time to time the town may lease parking lots from private park. So I'm not saying exactly what parking lot it is. I mean, what it says is from time to time the town may lease additional parking lots from private landowners. These parking lots shall be herein referred to as leased parking lots. And a list of such lots shall be kept on file with the Belvedere Town Clerk. All regulations for municipal parking lots shall apply to these leased parking lots. This way, if this year you rent from Scoog and next year you don't, and 2 years from now you do, but then you rent someone else's parking lot, you don't have to keep changing your ordinance because it's expensive and it takes 2 months to do it every time. This way, it's something in here acknowledging that you have these parking lots, and so someone can come and look. Plus, you'll have signage in all of your lots. Basically, this gives the police the right to write tickets in those lots. Then what I did for the use of the parking lot, I kept it the way it had read before. I made sure to write all municipal parking lots owned and leased. I kept the 8 to 9. This is a work in progress, so if anyone has any changes they want to make, but that's what you already had. So I kept that. I said 2 hours for parking, no overnight parking. And then the paragraph D, I added to address more than anything the Scoog's lot. It says the town shall be permitted to exempt certain spaces and/or vehicles from the township parking lot restrictions as part of the lease with an owner of a privately owned parking lot. The town shall provide a police-approved placard to the landlord for such exempt vehicles. It shall be the sole responsibility of the owner of the vehicle to display his or her exempt placard in the front windshield of the vehicle at all times while parked in the leased municipal lot. What this would be for is when you were first negotiating with Mr. Scoog about his lot, he wanted a few lot spaces for his own. Instead of that, we said, well, you know, we want to be able to use all those spaces, but your employees can use the spaces too. This would exempt them from the 2 hours, because obviously if Mr. Scoog is there working, or his son is there working, or their employees are there 4 or 5 cars, we need to be there for longer than 2 hours. So this is something in the code to acknowledge that. The town can come up with the police with just some sort of laminated something that they can throw in their front windshield, and that is a way that the police know that these people don't have to abide by the 2 hour, because that's what we negotiate. But even though you negotiate, you have to put it in the code section, because otherwise the police don't know. Eventually they may know who these cars are and won't even need to look for the placard, but it gives you the teeth in the ordinance that you need to enforce it for everyone. The signage section, the next section, is exactly the same as what you already had. I put a violation section. I put $50 per day because you had that somewhere else in your ordinance. That's up to you to decide fine for that kind of parking. What I took out was the permit parking, because I think council expressed to me that they didn't feel they had a need for permit parking. In addition, Riverside Park, we were told by Green Acres, they wouldn't like any overnight parking, any, you know, they don't like that sort of thing. So since I thought that was the thoughts of council, that's what I did. The next section is handicap parking, and you look at it, a lot of it is very blank. It's, I wouldn't say very blank. It is various sections all the different kinds of handicap parking you can have in the town. And this is that sample that I showed all of you that came from Lopakong and Harmony, I think Hackettstown has something similar to it. Basically what it does is it lays out every kind of handicap parking you could possibly have, and then puts reserved under it. So if in the future, you only change it once to make a template, and then if you have these spots, you can just add it in, and then your cost of advertising one sentence as opposed to a whole new ordinance. What I did think you did have is under section A, handicap parking on streets. I know Mill Street has parking spaces. So I wrote in Mill Street, but I did not give an exact location because just as we were discussing earlier with this many feet from whatever, I would leave it up to council as to exactly where and how big the area. I know there are 2 spaces there now. I think the people who live there are misunderstood that those are only their spaces, but they are not. They are general spaces. So what we would do is either John or Paul Sturbins or anyone could go out and just, if you could measure back from Greenwich Street, so we can say it starts here and it runs 250, I'm not a measurement person, but that's how you would describe it, and you would say 2 spaces in parentheses. So I kind of left a line so we would know to fill that in. The next section is if you had someone who you wanted to allow to park on the street, and only they could park in their spot. If they had a handicap permit, for example, if you go to Harmony's code book, down in Brainerd's, where parking is a commodity, they have one gentleman who's handicapped, and he's lived there for 45 years, and this spot on the sign says only for, and there's a permit number. The statute allows you to do that. So someone could come in and ask the town for that, and you could add that section. Right now, I don't think anyone has asked, and so it just says reserved, so it's just blank. The next section is handicap parking in municipal parking lots and Board of Education properties. I didn't do anything with the Board of Education property, but I did just acknowledge that parking lot 1, parking lot 2, and leased municipal will each have 1 space. I didn't say where they were, I just said as marked. That way the town has the right to go put a sign in 1 space will be designated as the parking. The rest I left all as reserved. 1 is for handicap parking on private property open to the public. This is more if you had a business that came in and got a site plan and they were required to have a handicap space if you wanted to designate it in your ordinance. The next one is handicap parking on private property, not open to the public. Those are not necessarily something that applies right now to Belvedere, but if you had a good example I use is Panther Valley in Alamochi. They have adopted Title 39, which means the police are allowed to come into Panther Valley and patrol and give speeding tickets and parking tickets and things like that. If you had a developer who did that and then asked for police, you could designate handicap spots. And then there's 1 for municipal parks. I left that blank because I wasn't sure if you had any handicap spots in your municipal parks, but that's the beauty of having it like this with reserved. If you told me right now, oh, we could fill it in, or you could add it at a later date, or if you added more spaces at a later date, you could change that. And then there's a section for postal properties, which is kind of weird, but that's whatever, it's kind of the form that everyone has, so I left it in, you don't have to keep it. And the next section just talks about signage. Obviously, it says on private property, those people are responsible for putting up the signs, because those are, if a developer wants handicaps, wants to do all these things, he's gonna pay for the signs up, not the town. And then there's a violation section. And then you were left with 1 extra section, so I just wrote reserved in case you ever want to put something in it, and it didn't mess up the numbering and the rest of your ordinance. So that is a nutshell of what it is, but like I said, it's a work in progress. I just wanted to get it on paper so you could pick it apart. And just something to keep in mind, this is an ordinance which requires 2 readings. You can't do first reading in 1 year and second reading in the next. So I don't think there's enough time to advertise, so you're probably looking at January for first reading anyway. So no urgency. I just wanted you to see everything in print.
Good question. I noticed that you put $50 per day. Do we need to stipulate in there at what point in time the police officers can tow the car and impound it? So if the car's sitting there 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, at some point in time, they're going to want to impound the vehicle. Do we need to have that in the ordinance?
I probably should.
So we're going to consider it banned.
State law would supersede that.
Well, yeah.
Abandonment of another vehicle after 48 hours.
Well, and what I was gonna say is what we put in,
What is the time frame again?
I believe it's 48 hours for abandoning a motor vehicle.
For Title 39.
Yeah, that should supersede, it's not
Would
public or
Title 39 apply to the municipal parking lots?
parking lot, roadway,
You don't have to adopt it,
if it
right?
was in a
well,
yard, it's a little
and
bit.
one of the violation sections, we can amend them both to say it. It says, unless another penalty is expressly provided by statute. So
Okay.
it's, in case there isn't anything, $50 is the default. That's the, if it's like a parking ticket thing. So we'll just make sure they both say that.
Do you want to write in there Title 39 like Al Murphy did, or no?
I'm sorry, what?
When you say it's by statute, so do we want to put in there Title 39,
Well, they have,
or is it applied?
it is implied, and actually a lot of these, especially in the handicap spots,
Mhm.
it cites 39. Whatever section it is, it cites that section, but in a lot of them are 39, 39, 39. so.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions on the ordinance?
Again, there, I just kind of like to ask the chief to weigh in. Anything, chief? Is that-
Everything was taken care of, that was my biggest concern.
And what is that? On what area?
The employees,
Under 155-9.3, form 2? Is that what you're talking about? D?
I don't know here.
That was the one with the
Yes.
permitted or window.
Yes.
Question,
9.3.
but if there's a separate lease, how does that affect D?
Well, this just acknowledges that there could be a separate lease, and that if there is a separate lease, and under that lease, because you may enter a lease with, let's say there's another parking lot, and you may enter a lease for that one, and there is no allowed extra parking spots, then there would be no permit. So this is just saying that if it's part of a lease, the way that people will show that they are allowed to park there is they will get these placards. It's their responsibility to get them, it's their responsibility to show them, but if they have the right under the lease, then they'll come into town and get one, and they'll put it up.
So somebody who's working 8 hours a day wouldn't be moving their car all over the lot.
But if it's not allowed according to a lease, whatever lease we
Then
would
we
make
would-
with various, then we are not entitled,
Then we wouldn't give them, whatever placard.
we would not be able to. Any further questions on this?
Mayor, I just wanted to confirm, we have John Snyder here this evening, our Director of DPW. He will do the maintenance of this and he will do the plowing. John, is there anything you need to lend into this regarding
The
the
plowing of the lot and the maintenance of what we're discussing, the ordinance.
No, well, she's talking about the lot itself. Once we
Which
take,
lot?
Scoogies, once we take it over.
Oh, okay.
Um,
All right.
I had the same concerns the chief has, and right now I don't see any problems, so, you know, it's,
Right.
I'll be able to plow, I used to plow it anyway, we used to use it in the past, that's why that ordinance is in there. It'll be just like it was 10 years ago,
And
that's
what
all.
about Riverside? You clean that one out also?
Riverside Park, yeah, I do Riverside
Okay,
Park,
so
I do that, I do Bud Jones
Right.
here.
Okay.
I do want to address with the chief that there are probably about at least 8 people that, with the Scoogies lot, that were allowed in the past, actually by Mr. Scoog. Very generous over the years to allow people parking in there, about 8 spots for snow emergency. They are going to be displaced apparently because 2 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, when the previous first meeting was, it was discussed that there would be no overnight parking. And in this ordinance, it's saying no overnight parking. What are your recommendations for these residents?
No, 70% of them have spots. They were just a little too lazy to go to the rear of their properties.
Well, for the balance that don't, what is your recommendation?
I don't know what they've done in the past before.
Just
Scoop
like
let
Ken
them
Meyer,
work.
Sure,
that
that's not bad.
my personal opinion, that's not a question for the chief. We have a business agreement with a property owner that we're trying to enter into. And if we secure this agreement, the property owner is responsible to take care of the people that he previously took care of. I don't think that's a fair question for the chief.
Well, I'm just wondering if he has any ideas, because he knows the town best. Believe me, he knows even what cats belong where in town. So he's got a good handle on the town. I'm wondering if he could make any suggestions. And that's just a fair question.
That's a fair question. I don't think
For
it's the
these
right time or
residents
place.
that are going to be coming to town council when they don't have a place to park.
Then they can go to the property owner that they had a business agreement or whatever agreement with, and they will deal with it.
But if
It's a business decision.
But if it's stating and we
You're mixing apples and oranges. One's a business decision, the other one is a parking issue that we need to address for the municipality. And I don't think it's fair to put the chief in that spot.
Well, I'm asking for his recommendations if he knows of any other spots. And I think it is a fair question, because when residents come in, they pay taxes. They're going to want an answer. They're going to want help. So none that you can,
My suggestion would be parking in lot 2 since it's not utilized.
park.
In lot 2, but there's no overnight parking, so.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm trying to
I don't know
address
what
the problem.
I don't know what they did in the past before Larry let them park in their lot.
The town issued permits when that parking lot was handled by the town, and actually, they would come to town hall.
Well, permits were over before I started here, and they weren't allowed to park in Scoob's lot when I started here.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know where they park.
He's been very generous over the years and did allow, because that's where they have been parking. So what I'm saying is it's going to create a problem, and they will be coming in, and we need to try to be able to address what we can say. I know I've reached out to actually Independence. They do have residents that don't have places to park literally, and they do permits for them. So if other municipalities work out the situations, I'm just wondering, I know this is going to be an ongoing thing. It'll probably not happen until the new year, but what are you going to tell the residents when they want to come in here and ask for help where they're supposed to park?
Councilman Seabold, didn't you head the snow committee, and wasn't there something?
Well, we did, but
Excuse
when...
me, I'm asking Councilman
Yeah.
Seabold a question.
About the fire
Where-
department?
Yeah, what was that about?
We were trying to work it out with them, but I believe the town doesn't own that property, and that was the issue.
Okay, so it didn't go.
It wouldn't be enforceable,
Okay.
because it would have to run through them, they'd have to make the complaint to the police department, I believe, and then the police can do something.
So we can't use that.
It would be too hard to try to.
Just
work
wanted
it
to
out.
double check, because I know you were working on it. Yeah.
And we have brought things back to council, but it has been turned down every time, so we're back in the same boat. I'm just trying to be fair to everybody.
Well, I don't think, without having a property owner here, I'm going to dispute your claim that you have 8 individuals that park there during snow emergencies, number one. Number two, we've tried to address numerous times about parking that individuals don't have, that rented spaces, that have whatever, strictly just on-street parking. The fact that we're going to have individuals that may or may not be allowed to park in Mr. Scoop's parking lot isn't a conversation for this time, in my opinion. I think that this council has been trying to do its best over the last year or 2 years to try and find parking. And I know that we stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest with some railroad property that we had that we were allowed to use. And I'm sure we can work with the fire department. I know they have an overflow lot, and I'd be very surprised. We also have a municipal parking lot that we can extend services to. So I think that we have a lot of solutions available. But to sit here and say that we have a specific number of residents that are going to be displaced because of this agreement, I don't think is fair. I don't think Mr. Scoop would do that to the people and himself. He's coming forward, and I think it's a great agreement. So I don't know if this is the conversation that we should be having. But you can continue, Mayor. I'm sure you will.
Thank you for your comment, Charlie.
Just
If
quick
there
question
is,
also.
go ahead.
If somebody is parked there and they go beyond the 2 hours, they get one parking ticket for the whole day? Or does it, I just wanted to understand how this is
Technically,
being
we do it every 2
enforced.
hours, but.
When I was
usually
writing
that's-
this, I was thinking that through, and I said to myself, do I put in there every 2 hours and write them another ticket? Or I put per day, so every day you could go back and write another, I mean, if they're over 2 hours and tomorrow you're over two, you could keep, if they don't move their car at all, and 3 days ago, I mean, you could tow it after 48 hours, but you could change it to say every 2 hours, you can write them another ticket, but for some people, it may be, let's say one time they parked there, maybe they didn't know, and they parked there for 8 hours, and do you want them to come out and have, 4 tickets on their car for one time? Maybe you learn your lesson, you pay $50, you never do it again. I don't know, maybe you think people should see the signs, but that's completely up to you. That's, to be honest with you, I thought that when I was writing this, because I like to make sure that at least every day is a new violation, so if you had to keep writing.
My question to you is, since the possibility of the lease would be written with no overnight parking, that would be on both sides of the leaser and the person who was leasing.
Well, it's his property. It was him who asked for no overnight parking, I think. But the way I wrote it was that if the placard remains in the window, the time limits don't apply. So
If we declare, if the chief declares a snow emergency, can they also have the caveat of saying emergency parking is available at X, wherever that may be, and would supersede?
well, it depends. That's what we originally had put into the Scoogs lease, that, no overnight parking except for municipally, but we took that out. The council wanted to take that out. So technically, unless you got permission from Scoog to allow people to park in his lot, when you, like if you said, listen, the storm's coming, it's really bad, and he gave something in writing and said, yes, you can tell residents they can park there.
Okay.
Then we'd have to let the police know that, the municipality.
But I agree that basically you're mixing two different things when you're talking about it. One is to get the ordinance in place, the other then is what is the options for parking when there's a snow emergency. And I think Charlie came up with a number of things we could talk about as options versus getting this nailed first.
Well, I think things have to be addressed, and I think we're just kicking the can down the road. I have spoke with the fire company, the chief has spoke with the chief. There is a possibility of last resort emergency parking up here at the fire company. That would have to be worked out between council and the attorney drafting something up, leasing it for $1 with a possible small amount of spaces, 12, that are between the large parking lot and the small municipal parking lot. I know the chief has talked with the chief, so that's further details to be worked out. But I do have a resident 2 doors over that they have at least 4 vehicles. The resident was going to be here tonight, but unfortunately she has a newborn and 2 other children. Her husband does work various hours and apparently was able to come this evening. So I know my neighbor doesn't have parking. I have 1 parking spot, which I've talked to the chief about. Does not park on the sidewalk, but on my slab out front. And he said as long as it is not physically on the sidewalk to block where people walk through, that I could park there. There is the property across the street, which I went down to talk to some residents today, the old Bramson property. It's vacant right now. The chief thought there was property that by the alley that did meet that property. I was informed by the residents down the street, it does not go up that far. So there's a problem there of somebody maybe looking to buy that house and not buying it because of no parking spots. So it's not only a problem for residents that live here now, it creates a problem for getting rid of houses that don't have parking.
I think
So,
I think Councilman Petrie is correct. We're trying to mush two things into one conversation. I think.
are any votes on either going to be taken tonight?
My understanding is that the lease was amended to include the concerns of the police chief and the DPW, and they have been amended, and yes, I.
If we're interjecting, just interject, if we're gonna talk specifically about the lease, there is one more thing that I would like to make
Okay.
about.
I think we should stick with one topic.
Okay.
The parking's been an issue since the town was created, whether you're talking horse and buggy or car. So I think that's a different issue entirely. The lease is a standalone, and I think we should go forward with that and then deal with the parking issue because we will be supplementing what was a concern. So I think that would be my
All right.
suggestion.
Charlie, are you prepared to speak on that other?
Absolutely, the lease that was, that was mailed to everyone earlier this week, after talking with the chief, and I talked with Councilman Kennedy, the only change that we would like to do to it on page 4, item number 12, towards the very end of the paragraph, we would like to add that the landlord shall be issued 5 permits that may be distributed to the employees on an as-needed basis, basically at his own discretion. So in other words, you know, obviously there's people working in the pet shop, there's people working in the deli, but we thought it would be fair that, you know, the landlord or the owner would have 5 permits to issue at his own discretion. If an employee was working there, they would be able to put the placard on their car. And in talking to the chief, we both thought that 5 was a fair number. And that would allow to continue business. And, you know, it'd be a snow and whatever. I mean, excluding emergencies, because we did talk about not having anybody park there. It'd be solely up to the property owner to issue these placards. And the reason for that, obviously, is, you know, if we have an employee that's working there, they're going to park the car there, they're going to be there 8 or 9 or 10 hours. In all fairness to the law enforcement, if they're going to go out and try to ticket a vehicle, the first thing that somebody's going to do is take a picture of this car and say, listen, that car's been there 8 hours. So obviously we need a placard to say that, you know, it is permissible for it to be there, and it's an employee. So we thought 5 was a fair number. But other than that, there would be no changes to the lease agreement that was mailed.
I do want to bring up one thing, and I think there was a misinterpretation. It says on number 12, it says, tenant acknowledges that the parking spaces will also be used by customers of the 2 businesses. Does he mean, or should that have been?
I wrote that, and I am maybe not as familiar with that property as everyone else. I thought 2 businesses.
The poodle shop thing.
Scooby Doo's is one business and Scooby's LLC.
Right, and I didn't know if they were both on the same property.
Yes,
They are.
So I listed them as the 2 businesses located on the property, but I didn't, if they're not both on that same block and lot, I can say, we can explain it better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's, we figured even with 5 permits, that would still cover both properties. Businesses.
What would be the difference between customers and employees? The placards would be
Correct.
for employees or longer than 2 hours.
But what changed that made that have to be added to the agreement? Because I don't see anything in the original agreement that says anything about
No.
the business owners having exemptions, but now.
What changed with this, when I talked with the chief, one of the biggest problems was, he said, if we don't put this in here, basically we're enforcing all those vehicles out onto Water Street.
Okay.
Because they're not gonna be doing 2-hour parking. So in fact, we're hurting ourselves because now we're adding more congestion on Water Street because they're gonna be parked there 8 or 9 hours, whatever their hours are for working. So you know, as we discussed it just made more sense to allow a placard, mostly during business hours. You know, the employees come in and they'll be able to park wherever, and I mean, it's up to the business owner, but if it was me, I'd have the employees park as far away as possible to allow your customers in. But that was the purpose, so that we didn't force these people, the employees, out onto Water Street or on Main Street.
Is the parking lot currently marked off for parking spots, or is it just?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the whole parking
Yes.
lot?
Yeah.
These couple of changes that you're referring to were made by me after I spoke to the mayor and Councilman Kennedy about various issues. So a couple of changes were made to that. Just that section, a couple. First, I put, added in the first sentence, I put approximately 31 spaces to help in case anyone thought, well, what if he repaves the parking lot and relines them and now there's only 20 spaces and we're paying for 31. I said, you know what, that's a nice way to tighten up what we're getting. And then what I added at the end was part of, if you remember, when he first came to us, he wanted to keep a couple spaces for himself, and council said, well, we'd kind of like to use the whole thing, but this was, I think, the compromise between that was you don't get 5 that are just yours, but you get an exemption from the time limit. So what I added in was that the town agrees that time limits on parking shall not apply to the owner or his employees, and I think, Councilman McAtory, if we say up to 5 vehicles, period, the landlord and his employees shall display a placard in the front window of their vehicles to alert the town police that those vehicles are exempt from the municipal parking time limits. So this way, we're adding in that 5 by saying that it doesn't apply to the owner and his employees up to 5.
But where do all the other employees park, or all the other businesses in town?
That's my next question, because it's a known fact that
Where are they parking
there are a couple of
That's what I'm
employees.
asking, that's what I'm saying, why can't?
That is my question, because it's a known fact, there are a couple employees from businesses on the streets, not on that property, that also had an agreement and were allowed to park there. Was
Park where, excuse me?
at,
Back up.
at Scoops.
It's not my, there's only one individual that I know of.
Me too.
Only one.
That is correct. There was one business owner
That's
that was
right.
allowed to
Paid
park
for a
at
permit.
school.
Yes, he did.
But he paid a monthly fee.
That's correct.
He paid a monthly fee to park there.
And how is that being addressed?
I don't think he can.
So that's what you asked or Scoop, and
That's something Mr. Scoop can
he allowed, and he could, forget you, if he didn't enter this lease with the township at all, tomorrow he could turn around and say, no one can park here. And then all of those people would be in the same position, you know, as they would be.
And he could decide to give him one of the placards.
And the other point.
So they would have to be covered under these placards.
Well, and that's what I was gonna ask.
If there are 2 other individuals that are parking.
Those are business arrangements that Mr. Schoon has made. He is giving that, those are a month to month.
Right,
At the end of
but
this month,
But that needs to be addressed if
By
that is the
Mr.
case.
Scoop.
Did anybody,
Doesn't need to be addressed. It doesn't need to be addressed by council, it needs to be addressed by the property owner. If we're giving him 5 placards, I personally don't care who he gives them to. And the purpose of it obviously would be for his employees. The hopes would be that they don't use all 5 every single day, and I would suspect that they're not going to. But if the property owner chooses to use all 5, that's at his discretion. We're leasing the property for the municipality for 31 spots. Ideally, we're gonna have 31 spots, or however many are available after these placards. What he does with them is his business.
I was gonna say, would council like to change that language to say, shall not apply to the owner, his employees, or invitees up to 5 vehicles? This way, there are 5 placards, and he can give them to.
Yeah, however you want, my
however you
personal,
want to word it so that it makes it easier for the
the
police.
landlord,
Well, they
the
still
owner will be
placard-
given 5 placards to
Yeah.
distribute at his discretion, his or her discretion. Is that fair? I mean, obviously, you want to cover your employees.
Right, I'll say his, to the owner, his employees, or his invitees, which basically
There you
means
go.
anyone he invites to use
Right.
the park, up to 5.
Correct.
Okay, I'll make that change.
Does anybody else feel that we're providing a service to a business that we're not providing to anybody else though, for parking?
I see your point.
The flip side of the coin is, we don't provide the service at all. And this property owner keeps his property
Well, here's my point.
private, and we've lost the additional parking.
Mike, go
Well, I
ahead.
was thinking, why don't we reduce the amount of spots down to the one section where there's 13 and there's 18 along the perimeter? Let him keep the 18, he can do whatever he wants, and then we have nothing to do with it. I really don't think we need 31 spots. I don't think there's that much traffic or that much parking, required at any given time. I'm not here during the day, I can't say for sure, but I don't think we'd use 31 spots. So if we, I was thinking we dropped it down to the 13 that are in that one section that's roped off right now.
Last Sunday, I could not get into Riverside Park. I parked almost down to where Councilman Kennedy lives to go back up to the antique store. You can't get a place to park there. Try and go to the food mart during the day. You can't get in.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm
So
just
I think
saying
we need the spots.
31 spots?
I
You think there's that many?
Well, it's because you've got trucks that come in and deliver there and all and take up a big part of the, part in front of the food mart and all. I think if we're gonna take the lot, we take the lot.
I think we get involved in a lot of the minutia. I think this is a worthy enterprise to try. Nothing's to say that we're gonna sign this for life. This is for a year.
Yeah.
If at the end of the first year, it's 31 spaces, half of them go vacant most of the day, then we can renegotiate it. But I think to beat it up unnecessarily before we even tried it.
Well, I think to be cleaner, we could take the 13, half the price that we're gonna give him, and let him do what he wants with the 18. He can let anybody park there, and we don't care about it. And it's separate. He has his parking, we have ours in our area, and we're both separate from each other.
I think that would make it, well, I don't know.
I think it's cleaner,
Chief.
honestly. There's no placards, there's nothing. He can do whatever he wants.
Are you talking about
Oh,
the
How are you
same?
gonna, now you have to
same price.
delineate, we're gonna be advertising this as a municipal parking lot.
Paint the lines yellow.
So we have to delineate it, and then everybody's gonna, know, I didn't know, I thought that's.
Well, there'll be placards up. I thought we had to hang, sign
And
up.
then we would only plow half of it?
Yes. Why
Would
not?
you,
I think
would
that's
you,
unnecessarily.
are you saying pay the same price?
No, I said pay half. That was my thinking. I think this is, we're providing a service to a specific
I'd like to make a motion.
employee
Okay, I
business.
You guys have completely lost me. The little roped out section, it's
Yeah.
13 spots.
Yes.
You're saying give that to Scoogie?
No,
Give
we'll
to
take
us.
that.
We'll take the 13
Yeah,
spots.
and,
Scoogie gets the rest.
yeah, and let him do whatever he wants. Then he can have his employees park
So
there.
I would only be maintaining what's roped off right now.
Correct.
Will he still be moving the planters and stuff?
I don't know about that. I don't know. Whatever he needs to do, I guess. I don't know. But we're the planners.
All right, real quick, if I may, please. And I understand what you're thinking, but it's not 13 spots. It's 7 spots on the Food Mart side.
And then there's 6 alongside that.
There's currently a chain going across
Right.
because the 6 are facing a chain. If the chain is not up there for those 7 spots, you'll bring through traffic in from Market Street, straight across parking spots to try to get to the storefront. That's why the purpose of the chain is right there. So if you take the chain down and move it, you have a solid space there. So there's a problem with people coming in Market Street side
And going right through.
and going right through. So
Well, they can
that
do it
was,
right now, too.
that was the particular reason why the change is there, to delineate between not having through traffic at
Right.
that point
And that makes total sense.
and the 5 going across. Again, all I'm gonna say is we seem to be all over the board here.
I don't think so.
This was, please let me finish. You know, when we first talked about this, it was looked at as a one-year lease. And I'm glad these changes came because it brought up some good conversation. But one of the reasons why we also had our attorney do the resolution for the correction of the ordinance was to make sure that if we did go into a lease, that our code and our ordinance was enforceable prior to us, doing this. So, and I welcome everybody's opinion. I think to lease out part of it, I think is a mistake, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion, so.
For what reason?
What's that?
Why do you feel it's a mistake?
Well, because I think we need the additional parking, as it was explained.
That brings me to another question, Katrina. Actually, Councilman-elect Des Fitzgerald did want to say something, since he is going to be on council and probably will be voting on this proposed new ordinance for parking and such, would I be allowed to entertain his question?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Tess.
Well, primarily, yes, we need the parking, we need it as soon as we can. But also, we brought it up before, that I rewrote the whole parking ordinance deliberately so we weren't doing piecemeal. That was 10 years ago, it's gone nowhere. I checked with Teresa and she assured me that that's coming up very soon, the beginning of the year. So I think, other than what you need to do to satisfy Larry Skoog over this thing, is the thing to do. The point that from my point of view, if Larry wants 5 places for himself, we should be getting something back. It's part of the negotiation process. This whole thing sounds like an offer we're accepting blind. The overnight parking problem keeps raising itself over the position of these people that are there that can't park any place. And again, I mentioned that before. We can make an income on that. There's no reason for that other than the snow days. And if people want to park there and have a permit, and there's a snow problem, the people who have the permit should call them, tell them to get the car out of the way, or take them all out of the firehouse. That happens twice a winter. Permits for people. Mike was reaching a point there about, is this exclusive for Skoog? It kind of is. You know that at one time I had owned a building that was, which now is non-Perel. That property line is directly behind the building.
There is no parking for that building?
There's no ownership of the property behind the building, nor behind,
That's what I thought.
nor behind Food Mart.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe it's the same for some of the other properties that, Tim, you were talking about. Some of you, when you talk, don't talk to the audience, you talk to each other, and I couldn't hear the rest of it. Going the other way, you may find the private houses that you were talking about, they have plenty of room back there if it was cleaned up. And I addressed the issue at one point that if you could get that cleaned up and linked to some of that property that the telephone company owns.
CenturyLink.
And I don't know what the switch is, but certainly when I'm sitting in the chair, it's an issue that I'll raise with the people that might be involved and try to do it, and tying that into the fire company's access to the rented property. It can also be done as an issue. But the permits for employees, suppose my former partner, he had employees working in their restaurant. Do they get a permit for Riverside Park? Do the antique shop employees, do they have property behind it? I know that the Food Mart has no property behind it. Property line runs right within 5 feet of the buildings.
From my research, Des, the antique store does have spaces
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
that's right,
But
but
from
they-
my research, the restaurant building doesn't. I might be wrong, the chief says it, they have it, but I don't think they do.
What,
The restaurant.
the restaurant I know has it. I own the property.
Okay. And also Food Mart does not. They
That's
have
what you said.
barely, what I've been told, barely enough to put their garbage cans back there.
Yeah, I know that's the fact.
Yeah.
So that creates a situation of this permit situation. If there can be an exemption for these people parking on Scooby's lot for the employees to park in any form, should be an issue that he has to deal with in some way.
That's my thinking.
I just think that there shouldn't be well, the problem with what you're suggesting is half and half. How do you know where they went once they parked the car? Do they only go to Scooby's, or do they go across to the Food Mart, come back and never go into Scooby's? Or do they go into the Food Mart and Scooby's?
Well, they have an hour and a half to do whatever they want.
Or at 2 hours.
For
they
2
have.
hours.
Yeah, 2
Suppose they never
hours.
went there, that's the whole problem. That's who parked where and whose property. You can't do that in a lot. I've been in a business in a lot where we had multiple owners and through all this thing. I spent a lot of time, 10 years ago, in addressing all these issues. And some of it is going to require hard-nosed action by the council. Cleaning up behind those houses from where you go in the tunnel and turn right. However far down that property goes, because there are people who have room back there to park. It's the same issue up on Mill Street. Give 2 handicap parking spaces on a downhill stretch because somebody got that before? No. Put the handicap parking space up on a flat level on Front Street. That's the way those kind of, so get away from all that other stuff and talk about the lot itself. I think what Charlie is saying really is where we need to go. This permit issue is what opened up all the rest of this. And up to this point, it was to be leased without the permits. Now, I understand the problem that can be recognized with that, but certainly familiarity with who the cars are and what they are. I've never heard anything in any of this discussion about the lot. How's this enforcement going to be done? Is it going to be done by trucking like I did?
I'm trying to allow you to continue, Mr. Fitzgerald, because I have a lot to say, and I'm going to point out the error of some of your comments, but go ahead and continue. But I do have enforcement, I do have some problems with what you're saying, but go ahead and finish.
Okay, thanks. How are you going to, is it going to be done by trucking? Are we going to get a license plate reader? I'm not talking about the car. I love your idea of making an employee as part of the police department, like put at crossing guards. That's a great idea. It's the mechanics of enforcing it. I haven't heard.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to address, the 5 placards that we talk about, and I'm not talking about the permits that the town, and it's something that we needed to address by ordinance, but the 5 placards was strictly an idea, and I'm assuming that the property owner knows nothing about this because there's been no discussion by me, and I'm sure probably by the chief, about issuing these 5 placards. This was strictly something that came up between myself and the chief because of the issue of forcing these people to park on Market Street. And the thought being is we're taking individuals that are employees, and I realize that there's other businesses in town and they park wherever, but we thought it was more prudent to allow the property owner to allow his employees to park in the lot rather than putting them out on Market Street. You want to get away to the 5 placards? By all means, this lease agreement is fine without it. The property owner is willing to give it to us without the 5 placards. That was strictly between me and the chief, and it had to address concerns with parking these cars on the street. That's the first issue. As far as the second issue on enforcement, we do have an officer that is a Class 2 special that the chief has designated to kind of be, although it's not going to be a parking authority, but he would also be our parking officer. We're looking at 2 to 3 days a week. The times will be basically articulated by the chief. There'd be irregular hours so that they can monitor the parking. But he's already addressed that, and we do have an officer that's going to go ahead and do it. As far as the exact nomenclature and as far as technologies that he's going to be using, I can't answer that tonight. But we do have a dedicated person for it. And I know we mentioned this in our last council meeting, the parking fines are $50 a person. Theoretically, and we're not supposed to be a revenue generating center, and we don't want to be. But by all means, if we issue 2 summonses in one day, it's $100 that comes into the municipality. It doesn't go to the state.
Actually, Charlie, may I interject? Because
Sure.
I specifically went to Dawn to double check that. This is her handwriting. She says the total, say, would be $50. Town gets $38.50. The state gets $11.50. This is her handwriting.
Ordinance, you keep the whole thing.
Pardon?
It depends on what it's written on.
Yeah, if you're right.
You may not have asked the appropriate question. It depends on how it's written. If
It's a
it's
town
ordinance, you
ordinance.
keep it 100%.
Well, I described the area, and
Well, maybe
this is
she
what
wasn't
she showed
clear.
If you
Yeah.
write it under Title 39,
Then there's a split.
that's the state statute. Regardless, however they write it. The bottom line, even if they write it under Title 39, we're still looking at $60, $70 for 2 tickets. So anyway, the enforcement piece is going to be in place. As far as the placards, that's a recommendation by the chief and by me. Again, we did not even approach the property owner about it. He doesn't know about it. We just thought it made a little bit more sense from a traffic pattern. But do what you will. You heard it from us. If you choose not to do it, that's fine. would suggest you do. You don't have to. And, with that being said, we have a lease agreement. I would like to make the motion that, we adopt this lease agreement as presented, the last one that we have that was emailed 3 days ago, and I apologize for the date, with the only addendum that we do allow the property owner to issue 5 placards for business purposes at their discretion to alleviate any problems with overflow. My motion.
I'll second that. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further questions or comments? If not, a roll call. Any further questions or comments?
I'll be voting no because I don't agree with the placards, that's the reason why. Otherwise, I would have voted yes on this. That's the only reason.
Okay, roll call.
Councilman Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilman McAtoy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Myers?
Yes.
Councilwoman Napolitani?
Yes.
Councilman Petrie?
Yes.
Councilman Seabold?
No.
Mayor Stetler?
No. Motion passes. Okay. All right, moving right along, what do you want to do on House Street?
Did you have any other parking matters since we're on? Let's do your thunder.
The only thing I would recommend is that for all these reserved and things, maybe take the next few weeks and drive around town and see if there's other parking, handicap spots we didn't think of.
Well, yeah, I was gonna get into that real briefly. Motion, roll call, it's all done, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. John, just a couple quick questions, and that's why I was just kind of sitting and listening, pretty much to what our legal counsel just said. We are gonna take a little bit of time and drive around, number one. Number two, obviously, we know once we drive around, it's gonna take a little time for signage to be put together.
First and foremost, I need to know what signage you're gonna need,
Correct.
and it's gonna take a while because I have to order it.
And I'm sure your liaison will sit with you and clarify that after you do a drive around. Third, I just wanted to say to our chief, while this process is going on for the next few weeks, I don't think anybody's gonna go out there gung-ho and be looking to write tickets. I think we're gonna give the courtesy of warnings and whatnot, correct? To let
We'll
the
issue
public,
warnings for a week before
let the
enforcement.
public and everybody know what's going on, so if they have any concerns or questions, they can call you yourself, so you can address them, so if we can do that. And again, I personally think bottom line is, our chief of police is our senior public safety officer. And he actually has authority above a mayor, so if something happens and he needs to make a call, no matter what the call is, I trust our chief of police is going to make the right decision and right call without going crazy. So, thank you.
When is the time frame that you can do the tickets?
What do you need the ordinance first?
The ordinance
Well,
will
is
be-
there one in place that they can go by or not?
Currently for parking lots, the South Water Street parking area is 2 hours. Technically, Scoots is 2 hours because the ordinance is, although we don't own it, but once the lease is in place, you could write those tickets. Riverside Park is yet to be,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean if you get the signage for the rest, you can't put the signage up and give some warnings to let people know that as soon as the ordinance ticks past its deadline, then you can. The handicap spots, I don't really have that many right now anyway, but we can check each one. We're probably on a case by case what the ordinance currently says as opposed to what we wanted to.
I have a question about the rent for December.
Yeah, you
Are
know,
you gonna take that out?
well, that's, I was gonna ask you as we were talking, this was originally
December first.
December 1st was when the lease. Do you want to take the month of December out?
Yeah.
Do you want to prorate it further
I would,
to start January 1?
I would probably think you're going to need to, yes. Correct?
I would think so.
Yeah, you know what, I meant to ask when you were talking about that, I was thinking that we're already the 7th, so we put it in there thinking it would start. But I'm gonna make the changes that you've already discussed, email it to Teresa, I'll take December, I'll take it out.
Well, just a quick question.
Can we prorate it?
Yeah, what if you say you want it mid-month?
Effective December 15th.
Can you do that?
As long as we have the signage.
Because I think we've kind of lost the initiative that we want to prevent people from finding another place to do that quick shopping because parking was such a problem. So if we prolong that, I think if we have December 15th as a start, we can prorate for 50% of that.
If you want to pick another date, I can prorate it by the day. You tell me what date you wanted to start, when we think we can get it to Mr. Skoog and he could sign it, that would actually take effect. 15th might be it, you may say the 10th.
How about 10th?
Mike, what do you think?
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I didn't vote for it.
He voted no, I voted
I would just brought it to the
no.
attention.
Well, that was on the agreement, that wasn't the,
Should we try for the 10th? The sooner the better. I think that's the initiative. We
Just
want
prorate
people
that.
to shop downtown. And that, from the time that I've been involved, parking, as far as the merchants were concerned, has been a significant issue with getting customers to come in. So,
Katrina, are you comfortable getting that back to Teresa?
Oh, I'll do it tomorrow morning. Oh, absolutely.
So it'll be 8, then 1 day for them and 1 day for the mayor, the 10th is fine.
Good for the 10th.
I texted Mr. Gunberg, I haven't heard back from him. We have one issue that we can discuss, though, or the mandatory line into report window.
Did I look like you're in headlights there for a minute?
You did.
Yeah, I
I'm
did.
sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you. And it's a matter that needs to be
No, no.
addressed before our next meeting, so.
And I meant to print something out, but I was checking my email before and I had the numbers. We have, the bulletproof glass seems to be the biggest sticking point that we have for the court. And I believe the quote we presently have, the cheapest quote, is to reduce the size of the window to 28 by 38. They want $4,438, correct?
Yes.
I did find, and I spent a little bit of time trying to look online, and I emailed a few people. I did get a quote back for the window, 24 by 36, with a cash tray. In other words, the whole frame, you just bolt it in, for $2,100. So, it's up to council. Do we want to proceed, or do we want to, and I know you had said maybe this particular vendor wouldn't mind if we purchased our own. Now, in
It was a
trying to
thought,
keep...
I don't know.
And try to keep the specifics, again, it was what they call a class 3, which is the highest level of bullet protection. And the reason I did that is because that's what he quoted in his quote. So I tried to keep it apples to apples. The only difference is, instead of 28 feet wide, or 28 feet, 28 inches, excuse me, wide, it's 24. Instead of 36 high, or 38 high, it's 36. So the size is just a little bit smaller, but again, it's $2,100 delivered to our door. Both places, I think the vendor stated it would take about 6 weeks to get the window. For this particular vendor, and again, it was just one of the few that I picked out off the internet that would give prices right away, and actually she got back to me today, was $2,100. So the question would be, for $2,300, could we get it installed? I would suggest we probably could. So,
Where's this when
Did we
you're
not think that it was approximately $1,000 of labor?
That's the labor for the framing, that's not for the installation of the window.
Okay, so that's
See, the window
additional.
now is
It's
very large.
Yeah.
It needs to be framed to fit this smaller window.
Yeah, this is-
So, that would be done by a
Okay.
carpenter.
Carpenter.
Then this, glass person would come in and install the window.
So your price, Charlie,
Now-
includes installation?
no.
Okay.
What this includes is, it would be a little bit simpler because it's the whole frame. It's an aluminum frame, and it has the cash tray. It's designed to have some type of not speaker system, but it's natural voice to transmit the voice. And then you pick what level of glass you want in it. We'd obviously pick the level 3. So the whole thing would come assembled. Basically, you would just be bolting it in and then framing around it. So as they reduced the size of the frame, they would just put this in there. And it was a ballistic company. I mean, it was a large corporation. It was one of many that were out on the internet that sold,
Yeah, because the 4400 is the window and the installer. You're gonna add another, I don't know, $5,000-6,000 to that for the framing to be done by a carpenter because of the size
Right.
it has to be reduced by. So you're looking at probably, let's say 5,500.
yeah.
Now.
I would suspect, again, it's me, if we're not doing any type of ballistic shield other than this window, first of all, it's ludicrous.
I agree with that 100%.
You're gonna shoot the sheet rock or whatever, but don't shoot through this little piece of glass, okay? Anywhere else you want is okay. But anyway, the point being, if this is a prefab setup, put it in place like you're going to Home Depot and buying a window, it's hard for me to think that we would reduce the size of that to fit this for anything more than $1,000, even $1,000 seems
Right, and
astronomical.
I don't disagree with you. If we can get it for 2,100, then we're looking, the difference would be, what, $3,400.
Right.
Is the rest of that installation gonna cost us $3,400? I have to find that out.
And I apologize, because I did print it out, I meant to bring it, I have it in my
That's okay,
email, and I forgot, but I can forward it to you.
Quick question.
Yes.
Were there any other items, since you're looking at this, that are hot on the press with getting this rolling? Are there any other areas that would need to be done?
Yeah, 5 points, and she complied with all 4
Yeah.
and 5.
We addressed all the.
Yeah.
So
This was the
is
big
the only physical one.
So
Right.
the only thing I wanted to do was to get,
money.
a date to say, okay, it will have it installed by, February 1st, so that we can have Katrina respond that all the other issues have been met, we've contracted with an installer, that, and have a date for them, so that they're not
Right.
So,
holding
yeah.
us up, the AOC.
So I think, again, and then it's a question of the council, we want to do it. If we do go to an independent vendor to supply this, I mean, is it something we could still notify the AOC, tell them, we're in progress, we can schedule an installation? Do we want to go to an outside vendor for something like this?
What do you think, Katrina?
We can always tell, the AOC, I spoke to the woman the other day, and she said, tell me how you're doing, and if you get done sooner, we'll come out and see it.
Okay.
So whenever they're gonna need to see it and know what's in before they're gonna
Right, I
sign off on
understand.
anything,
Yeah.
but by all means, if we've got everything else done and we say, this is the date, this is what do you have it scheduled for, and all that, they'd love to hear about it, the sooner the better.
My only concern is losing 2 weeks, Charlie. That's all, with the, in other words, to make sure that this can be done. But I'm sure there's somebody else out there, if this guy doesn't want to do it, that's gonna install what we buy.
That's
Don't
what
you
I'm
think? Yeah.
asking.
If he doesn't want
Is
to,
this guy gonna install either window that we propose?
well, I don't know that.
I would
I don't know
think
that
that,
without going back to
Okay.
him and saying, look, we found this window for this price. Can you give me a cost for just labor? Yeah.
I've seen 1 day's worth of work. I mean, I'm thinking $500 is high, but that's me, am I wrong?
Install the right way. We need to.
Call Gary Sassman.
Gary would do it.
Framing out.
I had Gary.
Anyway, the
I
company,
brought Gary in first, let me explain. I brought Gary in first and said, this is what we need. He says, I'm familiar with this. He said, I know this gentleman has installed. He says, I won't do that. I won't do that kind of work. He'd do the framing, the wood framing, but I won't install the window. And I'm sure it's whatever. There's some kind of insurance issue or whatever. The guy's bonded to install this kind of glass and yada, yada, yada. So Gary would not, would do the job. He'd do the framing, the wood framing to make the enclosure smaller, but he won't install the window.
It always comes down to that insurance, right, Sharon?
Yeah.
Teresa, while that was a requirement, there is no specific requirement as to size, is there, so that we don't turn around and park something in there and they say, no, good, not big enough?
No, it's actually larger than the one they have in Hope.
Good.
Why don't we try this, Charlie, why don't you email Teresa the specifications on that 24 by
Right.
38? Teresa, why don't you email it to this vendor and tell them we found an alternate window, what would the cost be to install this window that we found?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea.
Will do.
Yeah, the company is called Boulevard. You want to look that up?
If I can, let's do this. If I can get him to install it at a, you know, at a savings to what is, can you authorize me to go forward?
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Second? Okay, any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries full.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. I haven't heard back from Mr. Bender, but I'm assuming he's tied up,
Okay.
so.
So, I guess we'll move on down to resolutions. I have a resolution number R 2015-X89, a resolution authorizing refund of premium monies for Block 41, Block 14. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries full. Thank you. We'll move on down to approval of purchase orders. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor, aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries full. Do we need a need for executive session this evening? Anyone? No? All right, then I just need a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Have a great day.
You too.